research. Right. So guys, if I have to outline what market research is, it is the process of gathering customer related or industry related data. Right. Now there are two types of not gathering but analyzing as well and getting insights from it. Why is it needed? Because you need to understand your customers, you need to understand the industry, you need to understand competitors, and you need to understand your company as well from customer lens. In case you are looking for a new product opportunity or new business opportunity, market research is something that should be done. Right. So these are the primary reasons for doing market research. And there are two types of market research which any PM or any research team does. One is the primary research and the other is the secondary research. So in the primary research, you are trying to get the data yourself, or you have hired someone to get the data. And the feedback could be both. It could be both. So a lot of people, they have this myth that primary research always leads to the qualitative data, but it is not true. Primary research is also, it can also give you quantitative data. We'll get to that, how it can give you quantitative data, right? So, and there could be again two types of primary research. So again, the agenda, the why primary research is required is because of you need to understand your customers, you need to understand industry, you need to understand your company, and so on. There are two ways. There are two types of primary research. One is the exploratory research. So exploratory primary research you do when you are not sure about the problem that you're trying to solve, right? You don't know anything about the next product that you want to build. You have some idea, but there are multiple problems that comes to your mind, and you are not sure which problem to pick up, and you need to define your problem. In that case also exploratory primary research comes to help. And there are disadvantages and advantages of any type of market research you do. So for example, for exploratory market research, the problem is it is more of qualitative research. Exploratory is qualitative research, and you have to speak to a lot of people to define your problem, right? So interviews are lengthy, you need to take out a lot of time. It is very difficult to keep the bias away since the responses are qualitative, right? And it takes a lot of funds as well, because you would be talking to a customer, and a customer should be willing to take out time where he is undistracted, right? So one of the example of exploratory primary research could be, let's say, what are the best marketing channels? What are the best? So it could be, are social channels good for establishing a connection between the brand and your customers, right? So this is a very open-ended problem statement, and you need to define it, right? So this is one example of exploratory primary research. The second is the specific primary research, wherein you are trying to deep dive into a problem that has that you defined in the exploratory primary research, right? So for example, output of exploratory primary research is, okay, people are mentioning that Facebook is could be a good marketing channel, right? So in the specific marketing research, you would try to validate that. Is Facebook actually a good way of establishing a marketing channel, right? So you validate it with the multiple techniques that are available, right? And it becomes easier than exploratory primary research. But again, it is again, you need a lot of time and you need a lot of funds to execute that. The next is the techniques which could be used for doing primary research. So let me just go there to help you read it as well. So one is the focus group discussions, right? So focus group discussion is the discussion which happens with multiple people or multiple participants in the room, and there is one moderator who is leading that discussion, right? So it is primarily used when you're trying to brainstorm on a solution, right? On a broader problem or on a solution. you have multiple solutions in mind. Now, which solution is good? The focus groups discussion helps in that. The other is you can deep dive into a specific problem area, which is not possible with other avenues, other types of research, apart from interview. But again, interview has other challenges which we'll discuss. The disadvantages are, again, it is time intensive. You have to gather people, and it could be biased because in case you are quite stubborn about your idea, you could lead the discussion towards that, right? And there could be a biasness because some people could be are more outspoken than others. They are more dominating. So the people who don't speak a lot, their responses are not captured, right? So these are the disadvantages. The advantages I mentioned is you have a flexibility to deep dive, and you get to hear the real customer feedback. The next is the survey. So survey is something that is that helps us get the quantitative feedback as well. So for example, if you have a question like, do you like this? Yes or no? So that would give you a quantitative feedback. And at the same time, there could be a long, some questions that would have descriptive answers. So it gives you qualitative feedback also at the same point of time. Now, the advantages are, number one, it is very easy to execute. You can just create a form and send it across, and the same form could be used at different point in time. You don't need a lot of investment to do that, and it is relatively cheaper. The disadvantages are you don't get an opportunity to deep dive into the responses, right? So the customer would send you a response. Now you would have to roll out another survey to deep dive into that. You don't know, you actually are not sure why the customer has written that. You don't get that opportunity to ask the follow-up question. And also you have to take survey responses with a tinge of salt, because a customer could be in a totally different context when he answered that question. For example, if he has a bad experience, if he just used a product and he had a bad experience, most likely he would be giving bad feedback. But if you ask that question after, let's say, 5 or 6 days, the response would be mild. It would not be that bad, right? The next is the interview. So interview, as we all know, it is just a one-on-one interaction with the user, and you get to know your users better. But if your goal is to know your users better, you have to do a lot of interviews. And one of the disadvantages is it takes a lot of time, and it is quite expensive also. And again, it could be biased because you might ask some leading questions, which would take a discussion towards your idea or your feeling, right? So guys, do we have any questions in primary market research? Okay, so the next is the secondary market research. So secondary market research is the data which is already available in the market in the form of reports, or it is also available on some agency's website, or reports made by government or the consulting firms, and it is very cheap. Secondary research, you just Google and you get some data. You read different blogs. You read customer feedback on your competitor. That is what secondary research is all about. Now, one of the questions that I got for this webinar is, in what order should we do? Should we do primary research first, or should we do secondary research first? So first, you should always do secondary research, because secondary research would help you understand market a little better. It would help you understand who your competitors are. Basically, you just type your product, you would see a lot of competitors that are coming up on the Google, right? So it is always good to start with secondary research, because one is you would have some context before going to the actual customers. The second is it is cheap. I mean, it is free of cost, right? Because it is something that is already available to you. Though there are disadvantages of secondary research, right? So yeah, I mean, first you should do secondary research, and then you should do primary research. Going back to the disadvantages of secondary research. So one of the disadvantages though you are looking at the data which is available online, the problem is that data is not, it was not created for your objective, right? So it has some other context for which the data was created. The other is you don't know about the accuracy of that data, right? So the way to avoid that is you research, you deep dive into it, you refer to multiple sources, and then figure out whether it is the right data or not. The third is this data was captured quite some time back. I mean, it's a possibility, right? So when the data was captured, the market context was different, and now things are different. So yeah, so the data which is available, it might not be relevant at this point in time. So yeah, these are the disadvantages. So yeah.
Sanchit, I have one question here. So market research, this has been done by a product manager, because as a part of a UX team, mostly like we create personas, we do competitive analysis and research. So is this a practice which is to be done by PM as well, or the supporting team can help?
So the PM role, it varies across companies and industries, right? So for example, in a bigger companies, you would have a team of UX who is doing the research, but in some companies you would not have such team. So in that case, a PM is responsible for research as well.
Okay.
And I mean, even if there is a UX research team, it is always good to connect with the customers and get the feedback firsthand.
Okay. Even though like UX is available, but ideally said
Yeah.
approach would be for the PM to have a market research by his
Yes.
or her own self.
Yeah, market research is very important for a PMC, because see, your product success depends a lot on who your customers are. You need to understand your customer segment very deeply, right? Until unless you get to hear from them firsthand. I mean, my experience is, there is always, information loss when the information is coming from someone else, but not from customer, right? So either there is information loss or someone has added his own bias, right? So there is always, some loss. So I would always go and speak to my customers directly, firsthand.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Mhm. And it is very important that you prepare your questions that you're going to ask beforehand. So every market research would have an objective why you are doing the market research, right? You need to first establish that objective and then figure out what could be the questions, and then go for the market research. So a lot of people, they just go and ask the customer, okay, do you like this product or not? Which is definitely not a good answer, because you are asking him when you are standing on his face, and he would always say, yes, I like your product, right? So you need to plan your market research quite well.